Hello everyone, TheSkilledRoy here, back with another Legends of Runeterra video. So today, I want to talk to you all about something very near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is balance. Next Wednesday, we'll be getting another balance patch to Legends of Runeterra, and it has been one that a lot of people have been asking about. Bandle City has understandably caused a lot of schisms in the community, and I'm hoping that this balance patch will hopefully tackle a lot of the region's core issues. However, I do think a lot of people are taking this perceived imbalance and applying it to a lack of balance updates. So immediately, I decided to go out and see for myself. Has the game, in fact, seen less balance updates recently than before? Well, the answer is complicated, so let's dive in. Now, when Legends of Runeterra first started, one of its core tenets was that many other card games unfortunately had cards or decks that stayed broken for far too long.
And we get it. We've been playing them since we were kids, so we're super familiar with the flaws of our favorite genre. Spending an entire paycheck just to try another deck, over-the-top RNG deciding which player wins, metas that get solved way too fast, and cards that stay broke way too long. So we asked ourselves.
And even today, this is true for other card games. Legends of Runeterra typically gets the most balanced patches compared to other card games. A big factor in this is because it's a fully digital card game, which allows for a greater deal of flexibility unlike Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh's physical variations. However, over time, people began to feel that Legends of Runeterra wasn't patching frequently enough. So let's go down a journey and see where we started and where we ended up. First things first, the beta of the game. The beta of the game saw some of the largest patches, with nearly every single patch coming with a large number of changes. However, I personally feel as though judging the game based on the preview patches that most people did not have access to is not really fair, as it's not really relevant to the overall discussion of balance, because our playtime during parts of the beta was often segmented. So let's start with Bilgewater. It is definitely remembered fondly as some of the best of Legends of Runeterra, but was also home to some of the most degenerate strategies as well. Each main balance patch in Bilgewater had just under 20 changes, with one particular hotfix patch to address stealing from the opponent's deck. The Bilgewater rank season saw the second most balanced changes by a per day basis. There were a total of 56 changes across 120 ranked days, making for 0.466 changes per day. Following Bilgewater, we had the Targon expansions, and this is typically referred to in the community as some of the most frequently balanced periods in the game. And this is completely understandable. The expansion released with a handful of changes to some cards, and it seemed like every 2 weeks, some cards were getting changed or hotfixed. This led to the perception that the game was getting balanced very frequently, but in reality, a lot of those balance patches were actually hotfixes to address some really problematic cards. Infamously, this was when Lee Sin was moved to 4 mana when he completely terrorized the meta, and in fact, basically one balance patch within Targon is basically entirely focused on him. What's most interesting about the public's perception of this is that despite these number of changes, Targon actually had the least number of balance changes across the entire game when adjusted for time. It only had one more balance change than Bilgewater did, and yet because its rank seasons were nearly 50% longer than Bilgewater's, it only resulted in 0.301 changes per day. Definitely the least amount of balance changes possible. Next up is Shurima, and across its seasons from Azir to Gifts for Renekton, the balance here was definitely a sore spot. About halfway through the rank seasons, people began to complain about the lower amount of balancing compared to the previous season. Now, it's worth mentioning that the balance patches were less frequent up until this point, but for the next 2 balance patches in Shurima, they got a lot less, only amounting to 2 and 4 changes respectively. Now, the amount of time between these patches was widely criticized, especially with how rampant Azir was at the time. But what's so interesting about these patches is that Targon had previously had small patches as well. The size hadn't really changed that much, but the frequency had. Before the third Shurima set, Rise of the Underworlds, there had only been 4 balance patches, compared to the 6 during Targon before its third set, Cosmic Creations. Riot thankfully heard the outcry for more balance patches and rallied to accomplish something incredible for the final release of Shurima. This would go on to be the largest balance patch in the history of the game, a stunning 47 changes accompanied by 3 additional champions and their respective packages. This was likely the largest shakeup to the meta outside of a new region edition. Thanks to this large final patch, Shurima found themselves above Targon's balance numbers, reaching a total of 71 changes throughout its ranked seasons across 175 days. In less time, they made more changes than Targon. The final number of changes per day was 0.405. Now, Bandle City is next, and obviously there is a great amount of hate towards Yordles currently going on. Currently, the most played region is obviously Bandle City, but the difference between regions is a lot closer than it has been in the past with previous expansions. If you'd like to track these play rates yourself and come to your own conclusions, this data is available from lormeta.com, a great site that has been a huge help in observing the data of the past. But let's talk about balance patches. The patch speed is roughly equivalent to Shurima's speed, with about a balance patch per month. However, unlike Shurima, a vast majority of these non-hotfix balanced patches are quite substantial. The two we've had thus far are actually the second and third largest balance patches at 27 and 28 changes respectively. Now, I mentioned at the start of this video, but we are actually getting a patch in just a few days on March 30th. March 30th will mark the 218th day of Bandle City ranked seasons, and it was confirmed on Reddit that we are going to have 33 changes total. This puts Bandle City's ranked seasons to 102 total changes across 218 days, which results of course in 0.467 changes, an inch more than Bilgewater, who had the shortest ranked season. The Bandle City time period will officially be the expansions with the most changes per day. This is not even counting the April patch that will be coming up afterwards that's going to be focusing on champions specifically, where hopefully Katarina will become a real champion at that point in time. What does all this data mean? Well, firstly, I'm going to leave this spreadsheet I've been working on in the description of this video. I'll do my best to keep it up to date whenever I can, but now we can use this data to keep up with how many balance changes we get and see if Riot increases or decreases that rate. I think we as a community need to sort of come together and think on what we want more. Do we want less changes more frequently, or more changes less frequently? The data proves that even though Targon was seen as an expansion that saw the most balance patches, it also had the least number of effective changes. Meanwhile, Bandle City seasons, which have a bit of a larger gap between each balance patch, actually had much more changes. Of course, feel free to leave your comment below what you think is best, but now at least with full data and all sort of in a nice format that everyone can see, we'll be able to come up with better and more nuanced opinions on this sort of thing. Anyways, thank you so much again for watching. See you all next time. Peace out.